Hey, thanks for joining us here on part 2 of Hal Blaine on Drum Talk TV. We start off with Hal explaining how he determines the feel of each song before he recorded it.
I never started a song without listening to the song. What is the lyric like? Well, a song is a story.
So you really wanted to absorb the feel
Exactly.
and the vibe of the song.
Exactly.
And you use that to address the timbre of how you were going to play the dynamics and
But
not
I
just
also-
tempo, but everything else, right?
I also learned when I was working as an actor, no big deal, but a lot of guys were method actors, and they wanted to know what the scene was about. They didn't even know
Right.
what the film was.
It's the same
But
thing.
for them to do the scene a certain way, and I used to feel like I was a method drummer.
Right.
I want to hear the song. I want to know what it's about. I don't want to be smashing if he's talking love, to this girl.
Right.
I don't want to be just very quietly playing on brushes if he's going crazy with this amazing...
It was all about the mood.
It was all dynamics.
Right.
And we were the people that could do that. We were actually producing our own drum parts because we had one heck of a reputation.
Right.
And producers would come and say, just do your thing. Forget about the music. Do whatever you think,
Yeah.
whatever you feel.
Well, and that's a great point, because what you did in the Wrecking Crew, all of you collectively, is here's basically the same group of people playing 5, 6, 7 sessions a day for multiple artists a day, yet you had your own sound, but could create a sound for each different artist.
Absolutely.
And when we turn that into the other aspect of your drumming career, you were the one that said, you know what, let me put some other size toms here, some other toms here, and develop some different textures. I work on a site that I love to participate in for fun on Facebook, and it's a drumming forum. And we post pictures of drum sets. Sometimes we'll post pictures of a 4-piece, sometimes it'll be a 22-piece, and inevitably there's always going to be somebody that says, that's too much, all you need is a 4-piece, or you're not a real drummer. It's not about that. It's like I say, I have a response for that says, would you ever criticize an orchestra for having too many strings? Would you ever criticize a choir for having too many voices? How could you criticize a piano for having
88 keys?
You use what you need when you need it, and there's simply different tones, different textures to suit the mood you're talking about. Talk about the drum kit that you developed that had literally the racks.
There's a picture of it up here.
We're dropping it in right now so
Yeah.
people can see the kit that has the rolling racks of the different size drums. Tell that story. How'd that come about?
Well, I used to call them my monsters. And no one had anything like that. There are some drummers who claim they were using them, but they weren't. They came up with their own later.
Right.
I was lucky enough to be working with Nancy Sinatra. We were playing in Vegas, and there's a couple little solos that I did at Caesar's Palace. We did it on the Ed Sullivan Show. It changed the drum world. Now, the way it developed was that I was working with Terry Melcher, one of the great producers. He was the son of Doris Day. Unfortunately, we lost him a few years ago. Terry was a great talent, nice kid, worked for Columbia like his mother, CBS. One of my dearest friends, Mort Lewis, is the manager of Simon Garfunkel. He was the manager of the Brothers Four, the Stan Kenton Orchestra. It goes on and on. One of the great managers of the world to this day, one of my dearest friends, lives in Connecticut. Well, Terry Melcher called me in and said, I want to get some different sounds going with Frankie Lane. We're going to do some records with Frankie. I said, okay. And I started thinking about my timbales. I had 2 metal timbales, and I found that, this is before electronics.
Right.
I found that
Was
by...
it before electricity?
Well, not quite. I found that by loosening the head, I would get some decay. Boom.
Right.
Loosen the other head. Boom.
Almost like a mini timpani in a sense, right? Where you get a bit of ring. Some
Sort
tone.
of, yeah. I guess you could look at it that way. It was just the decay of each drum. Boom, 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 ba-da-boom, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-boom, ba-da-da. I could do drum fills. Terry loved me doing drum fills. So we did a record, which I'll never forget, called Don't Make My Baby Blue. And what I did was I took the little tom-tom, the little small timbale,
Right.
and put a tom-tom holder on it, put it on my bass drum. And then I took the larger timbale and I put legs on it.
Right.
So that's what I was using as my two tom-toms, just a four-piece.
Right.
And what is a four-piece set of drums? It's a piano, an alto, a tenor, and a bass.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's the melodicism of
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we did that record, and it changed the drum world.
Right.
Everybody loved it. And I tell you, I loved it so much myself that I wanted an octave of these.
You expounded on that whole concept.
And that's what was the concept of getting into what I call the monsters.
Right.
I was a Ludwig drummer at the time. I gave it all to Bill Ludwig and the Ludwig Company. It was just my loyalty. Never thought about patents or design patents or anything.
Right.
Had I gotten a design patent on those drums, I'd have over $100 in the bank today.
That's true.
Anyway, we did it. We did a beautiful solo, and I'm not a soloist. We did a beautiful solo on the Ed Sullivan Sunday Night Special. And within a month, every drum company in the world was putting out what Ludwig, this is ego time. I thought they would call it the Hal Blaine set,
Right.
like the Buddy Rich set,
Right.
or the Gene Krupa set. They called it the Octoplus. Great name for him.
Did you change your middle name to that? So there's some association?
I should have, I guess. But Ludwig, I was very loyal to whoever I played
Right.
with, whoever I was endorsing.
Right.
I've been with Zildjian
I was
for
going to say, you're a Zildjian man forever.
a million
Yeah.
years. And the people couldn't be nicer, just the
Right.
nicest people in the world. And they see drummers coming and going. And unfortunately, some of them died with needles in their arms.
Yeah.
Some of them just had, they get married, they got 4 kids, they can't play the drums anymore.
Yeah.
They have to work a regular job.
They can't work 7 sessions for 18 hours a day or go on the road forever.
And I'll tell you right now, I have to clear that up because people ask about doing all these sessions. Just generally, union sessions, 3-hour session. Maybe they could keep you for an extra 30 minutes, a half hour over if necessary.
Right.
Sometimes it was a double session. You had 6 hours, like Sinatra. 6 hours with an hour in between. So it was 7 hours total. 3 hours rehearsing, making sure the chairs didn't squeak.
Right.
Every microphone worked. They checked every phone line. That's how I happened to meet Ricky. He was a line puller.
Oh, is that right?
He was working for Wally Heider's, doing remotes, especially in Las Vegas, all over the country, with Sinatra, with all these people. And when we would work with Frank Sinatra, the first 3 hours, we never saw Frank. It was all rehearsing the music and looking for squeaks, glitches, anything that would mess up a session.
Right.
Then we would take an hour break. During that hour, they double-checked every line, every microphone, etc. When we came back and sat down, we were ready to record. And about 15, 20 minutes into that second session, the door would open, Frank would walk in with his entourage, with his little hat, the coat over his shoulder, just like you've seen a million times. And of course, the electricity, but you could get burned.
Yeah, he was really that guy.
Oh my
That's
God.
the thing, right? How
Oh
it wasn't
my
an
God.
act; he was living himself.
That
He
was
that
Frank.
guy. Yeah.
Fortunately, I had been Nancy's drummer. I was with Nancy's drummer for over 30 years.
Wow.
And I used to hang out at Frank's place.
Those are Frank's bells now in the background.
Isn't that amazing? Frank was, of course, the chairman of the board. He owned Reprise Records. When Capitol was dropping him, I knew Frank.
Yeah.
I had met him on the telephone years and years and years before. He knew that we were Nancy's drummer. He knew we did Boots. He knew that we're doing all these great records. He wanted the guys. When he started his own company, Reprise Records, all of a sudden, the Wrecking Crew was his band.
Wow.
And we came in and we were doing Strangers in the Night. That was his major comeback record. It was also happened to be Record of the Year, Grammy Record of the Year. And just the sweetest guy in the world, you know, just an absolute sweetheart like Nancy. Nobody was nicer or sweeter. The whole Sinatra family, Frankie Jr.
Right.
All of them, they're just wonderful people. And Frank's former wife, Nancy, we used to call her Big Nancy. Just the nicest lady. God bless her. She's still kicking along in her 90s.
Wow.
Lives in lovely Beverly Hills home. Nancy has moved now to the desert here.
Oh, is that right?
She does a radio show.
Oh, nice.
She's on Sirius XM.
Uh-huh.
And there is a network called Seriously Sinatra.
Oh, cool.
And they play Frank most of the time, but
That's
all
great.
the great, you know, the great American songbook.
That's great.
So the word spread so fast. And people ask about, for an example, the Beach Boys used to come to the Phil Spector sessions.
Right.
Not all the Beach Boys, but Brian Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
When Phil Spector came, it was usually a Friday night. It was the Wrecking Crew. It was his band that he called the Wall of Sound.
Mm-hmm.
He's working on a new band now called the Prison Wall of Sound.
Oh, goodness. Hal.
But that's Phil, and we loved him. We adored him.
Yeah.
He really made us all very famous because this was this young guy, came from New York, Tin Pan Alley. They called it Teen Pan Alley.
Yeah.
Used to be Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah.
And before you know it, we're doing Strangers in the Night. I mean, and Capitol was dropping him because they thought he'd had it.
Isn't that crazy when you look
It was
back?
like when Frank was with Columbia originally.
Right.
They thought his records were about to not make it anymore, so he joined Capitol.
Right. Let me ask you this, Hal. Given these, I'm going to say, countless sessions, the countless pieces of music you've worked on,
It's just approaching 6,000 songs, by the way.
That's
Just phono recording.
wow.
Yeah.
Is there a particular session that stands out in your mind in this way, Hal? Is there a particular session that stands out where someone came in that the Wrecking Crew was the band for, and you had no idea that this person or these people were going to come in and just blow everybody's socks off and just had an amazing career? Who would that person be for you?
Mamas and Papas, probably.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were absolutely incredible. And Lou Adler, one of the super producers of the world,
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the major owners of Malibu.
Right.
That's why I loved. In fact, it was Lou Adler who was there the night that I received that beautiful award.
With Bobby
Herb
Morris. Yeah.
No.
Oh,
that
the one with Herb? Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby Morris was a New York thing.
Right.
But the Herb Alpert, Jerry Moss,
Lou Adler and yourself.
was Lou Adler.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the point is, the guy that used to come to the sessions, I mean, they used to work, it was spread like fire.
Mm-hmm.
Phil Spector is recording Friday night. He always, very superstitious man.
Right.
Friday night, same drummer, same, all the guys in the band.
And it goes gold.
Always, everything he did, because he had tricks. A lot of his tricks were the way he did it. There was a big sign at Gold Star. Closed session, no admittance, do not enter.
So his tricks weren't just in the technical side, it was the way he conducted things, right?
whole
The way
thing
he
was-
ran the session, the way he dealt with people, was the whole
That's why
package, right?
people came and they would stick their head in, and Phil would see him, he'd grab him, pull him in. Hal, give him a tambourine. Hal, give him a claves. Give him something to play. And over in a corner of this small studio, there was probably 10, 12 people sometimes.
Right.
Just people who were looking, and they wanted to see what the magic fairy dust
Right. You want to
was
see it in action.
that Phil Spector was sprinkling on his records.
And none of them probably ever figured it out, right? But you guys were part of it day in, day out?
The thing that we understood was that, once again, if it felt good, I mean, we would do 29, 30 takes sometimes, or more with Phil, yeah.
And how much would he vary it, or how much would you vary what you were doing?
Very little.
It was just a matter of getting that one
Very
take,
little.
right?
He wanted to hear it. First of all, he kept me back like a racehorse.
Yeah.
In the gate, trying to get out, and wouldn't let me play a note.
Would you say he was more obsessive or diligent in getting after what he wanted?
He's both.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He was the most obsessive and diligent.
Yeah.
Hardworking guy. Anyway, the point is that some of his tricks were not only did they make a good record, he discovered the echo chamber, Gold Star, which is a whole nother story, a whole nother book, a whole nother television feature. Just that casket that they had up in the attic,
right?
That looked like a giant casket.
Yeah.
And one side, there was a hole on each side, and one side had a speaker, and one side had a microphone.
Wow.
And everything that was recorded
would just loop through
went into that speaker, and into the microphone, and into the board on the tape.
Got it.
And that's where he got this massive sound that it was incredible. Wow. And it never failed. Everything we touched turned to gold. It was an amazing time. Brian Wilson, I started to say, Brian used to come, stick his head in, look. Nobody ever heard of the Pendletons. This was the Beach Boys.
Right.
But Brian was trying to produce records. He wanted to see what Phil was doing. And so when Phil became friends with him and, invited him in and so forth, and he knew that Brian had a group called the Pendletons. That's all he knew. It was just another kid group. He didn't know that my dear friend Nick Vinay at Capitol signed Brian.
Right.
They became the Beach Boys. And the rest for the Beach Boys, I mean, that's major history.
Oh, yeah.
They just received the Century Record of the Year, something like that.
Wow.
To the last Grammys.
Yeah.
In February. When I got my award, the next night the Grammys were going.
Yeah.
And the Beach Boys got that award.
Wow, that's an incredible honor.
As a matter of fact, they're doing a movie now on the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. The great director was here interviewing me, not as a consultant, but he wanted to get the general feeling and the picture. They're doing that. I just finished the Glenn Campbell movie, same kind of deal. One of the great directors, James Keach, brother of
Stacy
Keach, a wonderful family of directors and actors and so forth. Nobody does more voiceover than Stacy Keach.
Yeah.
Incredible voice.
Yeah.
And just nice people. And here we were doing Glenn. It's probably, I hope not, but probably his last song.
Yeah.
He's not doing really well, but he's hanging in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's stopped all forms of concerts and so forth.
Just recently too.
Yes. Yes, and this is the year 2013.
Yeah.
So the people that might see this in 2020 or something, who knows?
Yeah, so that there's some reference to
Nobody knows.
Right.
But it was wonderful to be with Glenn again and making records.
That's great.
It was so Don Randy on piano and Joe Osborne, one of the greatest bassists in the world.
Yeah. How cool.
I mean, when you listen to Johnny Rivers and the Mamas and the Papas, and all of these people. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
There's hardly anyone we didn't record with.
Right.
And that was our reputation. These are the guys that are just, we call them the Wrecking Crew, but that's the name I gave them. I told my secretary when I started contracting, we're going to be called the Wrecking Crew. And that's when it started, about 1959 or 60.
Yeah.
We were the Wrecking Crew.
That's great.
Everybody got to know us. They were coming from England. They were coming from Italy. They were coming from France. All of these artists that we were recording. Just an amazing time.
Wow.
And all these musicians were coming out of the woodwork that didn't even want to know us or talk to us or saying, hey man, I worked with you on something. Wouldn't I be part of the wrecking crew? Well, yes, you were, but you weren't the nucleus.
Right.
Right now, we're being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Nashville Musicians Hall of Fame.
Right.
All of these halls of fames are inducting us because they know what we did.
Yeah.
Because of our work.
There's perspective to it now, especially when you look at all
Absolutely.
the evolution that's gone through, not just in music, but the music business.
It's just, it's really unbelievable.
That's great.
The impact I know that we made on the world, because it's from all over the world.
Yeah.
I get fan letters from Sweden, from Denmark, from all over the world. Plus my almost 11 years with John Denver.
Yeah.
We played all over the world. We got to know those people. Jimmy Webb, the great songwriter, who had two or three of the major records of the year, Up and Away, and all these
the
wonderful.
Fifth Dimension, Age of Aquarius.
MacArthur Park. Jimmy took me to London to record with Richard Harris.
Right.
I'd never heard of Richard Harris until I actually met him and recognized him.
I heard that Richard Harris never heard of Richard Harris until you met him. You were the one that introduced Richard to Richard.
And that does it for part 2 of Hal Blaine on Drum Talk TV. Watch for part 3 as Hal gets out his famous stamp and lays one right on my head.